Hi, this is Laura again. Today I want to talk a little about the controversial 1619 project. Parents must stop the disastrous 1619 curriculum before it changes our schools and nation. In December 2020, an African-American mother, desperate for her son, a high school senior, to graduate and go off to college, was forced into court to defend him. The young man, so close to achieving his mom's dream, suddenly found his life turned upside down and his future threatened. His crime? Refusing to confess his white dominance. William Clark, a senior at Democracy Prep in Las Vegas, Nevada, has a black mother and a deceased white father. He is, according to his court filing, generally regarded as a white person by his classmates because of his lighter skin, blonde hair, and green eyes. Last fall, Clark's school began using critical race theory curriculum in its mandatory Sociology of Change class. The teacher and lawsuit defendant, Catherine Pace, required Clark and his fellow students to reveal and make professions about their gender, sex, religious and racial identities, and subjected those professions to public interrogation, scrutiny, and derogatory labeling. According to the lawsuit, the teacher terminated class discussion when Clark and other students challenged her material. When the students questioned the programming, which assigns character attributes on the basis of race, sex, and gender, they were shot down. The teacher gave Clark a failing grade, penalizing him for not completing graded identity confession assignments. She flunked a kid who was part African American for refusing to label himself a white oppressor, trying to coerce him to accept and affirm politicized and discriminatory principles and statements that he cannot in conscience affirm. When Clark refused and asked for reasonable accommodations, the school threatened him with material harm including a failing grade and non-graduation, eventually acting on their threats. Fortunately, Clark and his mother didn't take this bullying lying down. And as of April, following a few weeks of discovery, the school backed down and has offered to expunge William's failing grade. He's on track, according to his lawyers, to graduate this spring. And it took William's courage and principled stand, along with a ferociously loyal black mother, to save his future. Could we ask for better Americans? This sick play is unfolding in schools across the country, where critical race theory and the historically flawed 1619 project, produced by the New York Times, are being forced into school curriculums. The Times offering, which famed Princeton historian James McPherson called a very unbalanced, one-sided account, which lacked context and perspective on the complexity of slavery, has come under fire for its inaccuracies. It is so wrong in so many ways, said respected historian Gordon Wood. But many schools, at the encouragement of the Biden administration, are plowing forward anyway, rewriting American history to de-emphasize 1776 and emphasize 1619, when the first slave ship arrived on the continent, as the key date of the American founding. Rand Paul blames Democrats for racism without context. Neither party has clean hands. A central 1619 project argument is that anti-black racism runs in the very DNA of this country and that one of the primary reasons American colonists fought for independence from Britain was because they wanted to protect the institution of slavery. America is rotten at its core with racism, they say, and our founding fathers were, necessarily, rotten men. The only reason to teach this theory, as anthropologist Peter Wood argues, is to indoctrinate impressionable students with a view that our country isn't exceptional. The theory's adherents believe America is downright evil, and those evil things can and should be unmoored from their historical mythologies and demolished. It has encouraged students to be protesters and pull down statues of Lincoln, Washington, Grant, and other American heroes. This theory has no respect for the Founding Fathers, the Constitution they wrote, and the Republican government to which they gave birth. The academics are brewing a recipe for a future undemocratic revolution and aren't terribly interested in public debate on the matter. The supporters of the 1619 project indicate that 1619 is a very important year in American history. To argue that racism exists in our DNA ignores the struggles and the hard-fought improvement of race relations in America. The institution of slavery existed here, as it had worldwide for nearly all human history, but was eventually destroyed in a war fought largely by white men, alongside thousands of valiant African Americans, striving to preserve a union founded on the principles of human equality. Racism existed, and still exists, in America but has decreased dramatically, as political leaders and activists, black and white, fought ferociously over the years to achieve the equality promised by our founders. It could be argued that race relations have never been better. But that won't be the case if these theories are taught in schools, pitting white students against students of color. Can people be taught racist views? Of course, and they certainly are. But to argue that these views are inherent, or dominant, and therefore should be part of some retributive game where modern-day oppressors and oppressed are punished and rewarded for the sin of our ancestors, is downright chilling. And it's why U.S. Senator Mitch McConnell wrote a letter to Education Secretary Miguel Cardona demanding that he abandon the Biden administration's plans to double down on divisive, radical, and historically dubious buzzwords and propaganda by incentivizing the teaching of the 1619 Project and critical race theory in our schools. Americans do not need or want their tax dollars diverted from promoting the principles that unite our nation toward promoting radical ideologies meant to divide us, McConnell wrote. The 1619 date may be the American slavery starting point, but it is not an important date in history. New polling reported by Josh Kraushaar at National Journal showed 3/4 of parents are opposed to teaching that white people are inherently privileged, while black and other people of color are inherently oppressed and victimized. And it wasn't just Republicans. 61% of parents who always vote Democrat rejected it, too. The American founding was not rotten, it was divinely inspired. Magical, even, when you consider how far we have come in such a short period. Yes, America is exceptional, and no student should be taught otherwise. Is our nation without flaws? Of course not. Do racists exist? Yes. Does institutional or systemic racism permeate every corner of our society? No. Are we a hopelessly failed state where racism can never be eradicated until we throw off the shackles of the Founding Fathers, labeling all white people of European descent as oppressors? No. Have we dramatically evolved for the better on race relations? Yes, and we improve every day. These are reasonable views under assault by a small but powerful group of academics and social engineers with access to potent public opinion tools and the will to use them. Parents the nation over should stop this disastrous curriculum in its tracks before its pervasiveness changes the academic experience, and our nation, negatively, and forever. To learn more about the 1619 Project, watch our recent video on it by going to Nehemiah.org webinars and clicking on the 1619 image to watch the webinar. Watch our social media accounts for more short videos on this topic and others. Thanks for taking the time to watch this short video today. I hope to see you again soon on another of these informational videos.